episode 271 of Retro Encounter, RPG fans' weekly podcast of many topics. I am not Mike Solosi, but I am Alana Hagues, and I will be your host for the next 2 weeks as we talk about one of my weird special favourites from my teenage years, Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean, a 2003 cult classic released on the GameCube only, and probably one of the most expensive games in the world. So how on earth we've managed to pull a panel together to play it is the luckiest thing in the world. If you're a regular listener to the show, then you'll probably know that we held a poll after episode 250 to determine what the first game we'd be playing was in 2021. And amazingly, this beat out Paper Mario, Dragon Quest III, Ys 7, and 3D Dot Game Heroes. So the Baten Kaitos fans live somewhere on the internet, wherever you are. Thank you. I never get to talk about this game, and I try and shoehorn it in whenever I can, so I'm really glad I get a little bit of a platform to pop off and have a little bit of fun. But I'm not here on my own, obviously. I have two wonderful panelists with me, starting with Tyler Trosper.
Hey, everybody.
And joining me as well is Pete Leavitt.
Hey, Alana. Hey, Tyler. Happy New Year, folks.
Yeah, Happy New Year. I think it's the first time I've spoken to you both this year properly, so yeah. Ooh. Gonna kick the year off right. But yeah, we're gonna jump right into Baten Kaitos, which is... there's a hell of a game. We're just going to be talking about Disc 1 today, but even so, there is so much to kind of cram in, because this is a mechanically dense, really unusual game for this studio, and it came out at a really weird time and it came out on a really weird console, to be honest, because the GameCube's not really known for its RPG library, I would say, and I mean, it's the console I kind of grew up with and got into the genre properly. Like, I'd played PlayStation 1 games, but like, it's weird to tell people that my like oeuvre started with Tales of Symphonia, Skies of Arcadia Legends, and Baten Kaitos and Paper Mario. Like, it just feels like a weird set of games, but they all do so many things so differently. And really, Tyler, I'm going to come to you first, because I know you've played this. You've played this as well, haven't you?
Yes. I played it when it originally came out, which, that's 17 years ago now.
Jeez, so, yeah.
Yeah. I hate to admit it, but the reason I kind of got into this was because of Monolith's previous game, Xenosaga 1, came out that same year. And I was like, oh, this is probably, it was another gateway into loving Monolith Soft. I really love this game.
It's really unusual. Yeah, see, I didn't know anything about Monolith Soft at the time, because obviously, for those who, if you've never heard of Monolith Soft, listeners, then I might be a little bit surprised and raise an eyebrow at you, because Monolith Soft are probably one of Nintendo's core pillars now of their like development studio. They worked on, aside from the Xenoblade games, which you may have heard of, they've also worked on Breath of the Wild. They worked on, I think they did something on Smash Brawl as well, and they've definitely done a couple of other games on the Switch. So yeah, they are a big force over at Nintendo. And for those who are unaware, Monolith Soft was formed in October 1999 after Tetsuya Takahashi of Square grew frustrated with the company and decided to leave and form this new studio with a couple of other people from Square Enix, or Squaresoft as they were known at the time, including Hone, who was one of the map designers for Xenogears and the Chrono games, and Hone is the director of Baten Kaitos. Not necessarily as well known as a couple of the other heads at Monolith Soft, but certainly influential, and I know he's given multiple interviews over the years, and he's always come back to Baten Kaitos as being one of his favourite projects, so I think that's really cool. But yeah, Pete, I'm going to pick on you probably a little bit throughout the episode, but I know this is your first time playing the game, is that right?
Yeah, I'm happy to say it is. Yeah, first time.
What are your like early impressions so far? Because obviously this is a really hard sell for some people. The minute you kind of pull out this is a card-based RPG, people kind of get a little bit scared away. But yeah, what do you think so far, basically?
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good reason for me to be scared away. But I mean, the only reason I care, because I actually, this is a copy that I managed to find maybe a couple years ago at this point, year and a half, 2 years ago, and just kind of had in my little stack of GameCube games, and I only ever was interested in it at all. Like how most people get interested in stuff. I saw like a Metal Jesus Rocks video on it or something like that. I don't know, and so it's just I just thought it looked really nice, and my early impressions of it are that it is staggeringly beautiful, and I don't know why people don't talk about this soundtrack more.
Oh yes, it's so good.
It's really beautiful, and really it both kind of communicates the feel in the more conventional kind of pseudo ambient orchestral sense, but also there's strong melodies and motifs throughout. It's just such a nice soundtrack. It's very strong in my opinion. I think it holds up to anything on the PlayStation 2 or what have you. And the battle system, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, is really weird. That's where the cards kind of come in primarily. But it does kind of make a certain sort of sense. And at the end of the day, I'm able to get through it. I feel like there's a layer deeper than the level on which I'm engaging with it. And I've kind of stumbled across some of those elements that I don't quite understand, but I could. But even so, I'm able to get through it, and it ends up feeling a lot like an RPG battle system, and the differences and the kind of implications of it being a deck-based and card-based thing set it apart just enough to where it's pretty interesting, and I find it pretty fun and not intimidating. I would tell people that if they were intimidated by this prospect of playing a card-based battle system in a JRPG, that in this case, it really isn't that intimidating, and you'll be able to get through and feel like you're in control most of the time.
Yeah, you make a really good point, because actually, it eases you into the deck system, because I think you only start off with 20 or 25 slots, don't you? And then as you gradually get more characters and get more upgrades, you get slightly bigger decks and you get more cards, and you kind of just pick up on things quite naturally. And like you suggested, Pete, like when I played this for the first time, like I wasn't overwhelmed, but I certainly didn't feel like I was getting the full depth out of it. Like I didn't fully understand everything, and it's only taken like years of replaying and reading guides and testing out things to really get it. But once you do really get it, it clicks in really nicely. Origins uses a slightly different card battle system. That's the prequel that came out in 2006, sorry. And that is a lot, I don't want to say easier, but it's certainly even more manageable. Like they took some lessons from this one. But yeah, we're not going to go quite into the battle system just yet. It's probably worth just jumping in. Essentially, we'll just go through the island nations, because I think the plot is fairly standard for the first half of the game. Like, it's kind of like a Final Fantasy, go get all the crystals kind of thing. But you start off in the village of Sebelrai, which is a farming village, and main protagonist Callus wakes up with amnesia, so it's one of those very typical openings, and he's very abrasive. Callus doesn't make a great first impression, and I kind of like that. I find Callus extremely interesting as a character, I think. There's kind of like a little group of, like, heroes, or I say heroes, but you put quotation marks around that, around the mid-2000s that had this, like, kind of standoffish, abrasive attitude. If you think of Yuri from Shadow Hearts, or Luke for the first portion of Tales of the Abyss, you've got, like, the bratty child, kind of, just, I don't want to say syndrome, but, like, definitely a little bit arrogant. But yeah, the beginning of this game is really interesting. One thing I didn't say, there's a couple of really interesting names attached to Baten Kaitos. Motoi Sakuraba is the composer, and as Pete has said, like, it's a really great soundtrack, and I would agree. I was on record on Rhythm Encounter a few weeks ago of saying that this is probably my favorite Motoi Sakuraba soundtrack.
Oh,
it's
definitely one of his best, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's also a top 5 soundtrack for me. Like, I adore it, and I think probably save some bits more for episode 2, and there's certainly some shared motifs between the prequel and the sequel, well, between this and the prequel, so, because they reuse a couple of songs as well, but yeah. Another name that's worth attaching to this is Masato Kato, who is the sole scenario writer, and there are certainly some bits that you can tell, isn't there?
Yes, definitely. Like, when I played this game, like, I remember when I first played it, was like, oh, I want this to be, I was thinking of Xenosaga, but in comparison to, like, Kato's other work, it definitely feels like a Chrono game and not a Xeno game. Like, the beginning reminded me of the beginning of Chrono Cross and Arnie Village. So just the look of it and just how it starts.
It does look a bit like Chrono Cross, right? Like,
definitly does.
Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say, like, blue-haired protagonists all look the same, but, like... But there's, especially in Selborai, it's rural. There's kind of I don't know, these are floating islands in the sky, but, you know, there's an island in Chrono Cross. I don't know, it seems to share, it seems to be on some of the wavelengths of Cross, yeah.
Kato kind of has, like, these recurring, like, motifs, like, floating, like, cities and islands, and starting off in, like, rustic home villages, stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, and oceans prominently feature in both games, whether they're absent or not absent, so, you know, so yeah, the ocean does come into Baten Kaitos, it's not just in the title for no reason, and I haven't gone into the history of the world yet, because it's kind of drip-feeded throughout the game, and it will probably spoil things if I give it now, but, actually, interestingly, rewinding a little bit, if you're playing this for the first time, don't watch the intro cutscene. There are some huge spoilers in that intro cutscene that might give away some things. So, yeah, just...
Also, you'll have to abide the voice acting if you do that.
Well, actually, you say that. The voice acting in the intro is actually okay. It's in-game it isn't, and... is this a good time? It's probably a good time to bring this up, actually. So this game's a little bit weird in that you are not the protagonist kind of thing. You control the protagonist, but you are, right at the beginning, you are told to give your name, and you are a spirit, a gendered male or female spirit, and you accompany the protagonist, Callus, throughout the game. And that's very interesting, because you get a lot of dialogue options throughout, and... they can affect certain things, which we'll get into in the combat side of things, but the voice acting, the reason I'm linking the two together is it sounds like, and a common criticism of this game, it sounds like the characters are talking into tin cans all the time.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just like, I don't understand. It's like, when I originally played this, I think I got to Diadem, and then I just turned off the voice acting. Yeah. Because I just couldn't handle it anymore. I'm pushing through, but it's just so weird.
It took me about 45 minutes to turn it off, and there's some moments of gravity in the first 45 minutes. And frankly, and, you know, bad voice acting, old video game, you know, it's a story as old as time, basically, but there were some moments of gravitas that just completely evaporated in the voice acting for me.
Yeah, there's something in Disc 2 that I'm sure if you have the voice acting on it's I don't want to say it's laughable, but it definitely takes the weight out of it. Yeah.
And you mentioned that you, the player, it does like the Panzer Dragoon Saga thing where it's like, hey, what's your name, player of the game? You're like an otherworldly thing. And that's a cool choice. I actually kind of like that choice a lot, especially later on. It'll have ramifications. And so it gives them a vehicle with which they can just turn outward from the TV and just talk to you, which is always fun. And you can potentially you can have a difference of opinion with the characters, even the protagonist and whatever.
Yeah.
But since you choose your name, when they speak, on the text, your name will pop up, and the audio on the voice track will just blank out.
Yeah.
Just like they pushed mute on it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's really funny because
It's so weird.
yeah, it's really weird because especially now, because when you get like name choices in games like that, it normally replaces your name with they, doesn't it, or them, or something like that. Whereas, yeah, it is very unusual. But yeah, I think it's a mix of like I think it's more poor voice direction and poor recording than anything else. Like,
Certainly.
yeah, because I don't think any of the voice actors in this game are too notable outside of this game. I don't think they've done too much more. I'm happy to say the prequel has very good voice acting.
Yes, the prequel's
Very
voice
good.
acting so much better.
It's, yeah.
The one good thing about the voice acting in this one, though, is that you do get to experience the most hilarious way possible to listen to the absolutely ridiculous proper nouns in this game.
You do, yeah.
Which we'll talk about, but just know, going into this, that the proper noun situation here is world class.
It's good, yeah. I mean, it's an RPG.
Good names, good place names, love it.
I was going to say, it's an RPG. What do you expect? Like, unusually, especially like a Monolith Soft RPG. I mean, they kind of
Yeah, it's a fair point.
yeah,
fair
they
point.
kind of get it together towards the Xenoblade games or whatever. But yeah,
It's a lot of fun. I like it.
oh yeah, no, I am really into. I love it when like games just throw
The Emperor's name is Geldablame.
Geldablame
What?
and Full-On and Amy, which is spelt with no A or no, with an E, and it's weird, it's bizarre, but
One of the countries is Anwewe. I love that one. Anwewe.
it's a Nua
That's what
Nue.
it is, right?
That is a word though. That is a Hawaiian word for rainbow. So yeah.
Oh, I'm very happy to be corrected on that one. Thank you. I'm sorry about that.
No. I mean, there's a lot of deliberate choices in the wording, and again, I think I'll probably save most of this for Disc 2, but much of the terminology in the game is around constellations and star signs. Obviously, there's
definitely some Latin in there too.
Yeah, exactly. But
Can't have a
still,
JRPG without Latin.
You cannot have a JRPG without Latin, no. I mean, what's an RPG without esoteria and silly names? Hey, yeah, we're used to it by now.
And if any game earns it, it's this one.
Oh, definitely.
This game does earn any kind of unusual thing. This game leans into it to a really delightful degree.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, one last thing on the spirit thing, and because it kind of ties into the voice acting before we jump full into the story. I read an interview once, or I read some discussion once. There was a rumor going around that the reason the voice acting sounds as muffled as it is a deliberate choice by the voice directors in English, because they were trying to convey the fact that the spirit was kind of out of... Do you know what I mean? Like out of the kind of sphere.
Like in a different dimension.
Exactly, yeah. So it sounds deliberately muffled. Yeah, which I think is really...
Never mind. I love the voice acting. Actually, I changed my mind.
I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. I don't think the execution's quite there. I think it's more of a voice direction thing than anything else. But I thought
that's a good swing.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting way of interpreting it, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially, yeah. So, hey, if it's like that, then good idea. But... yeah, I have never turned the voices off. I can't do them without voice acting. I like to have somebody talking to me. I sometimes don't read everything on the screen, so yeah. But yeah, I totally get it. Like, it's a turn off for a lot of people. But yeah, so once Callus wakes up, the only thing you know about him is that he has been in a coma, and all he remembers is his home being destroyed and his family being murdered, and he wants to seek revenge on the Empire. So he goes off to Moonguile Forest and bumps into a young woman called Shella and her little Greythorn Mimai. And Shella is very much a typical, she's your typical, like, deuteragonist, I suppose. It's not really a spoiler to say that, I guess. I think she's cool, and I think she makes for a good, like, match for Callus, especially because she's a lot more sassy than a lot of other protagonists I'd seen up until that point. I think she's got a bit of sass around her, and yeah, she pairs well with Callus, definitely.
Yeah. In my notes, I actually wrote down, like, Shella equals Proto-Melia from Xenoblade. Because the way you, like, they introduce her is just, like, she's in a forest and gets attacked and her two bodyguards get killed. And it's like, this is very much how you meet Melia in Xenoblade Chronicles. I mean, I know it's a different writer and all, but it's just like I got those vibes. But then, unlike Shulk and his team, like afterwards, Callus was like, "Let me loot these dead bodies." And I was like, "No, Callus, no, her friends just died."
Oh, they do set him up to be such an arse, don't they?
Yes.
They do it so consistently, but like the party completely are fine with it. They just like bully him essentially for the entire first half of the game. So
yes,
yeah.
Well, some of the later characters are like almost give the sense that they're like trying to take him under their wing.
Yeah.
Or he's misguided.
Literally.
Let's not ostracize him. Right.
Well, yeah.
Let's not ostracize him. Let's bring him on board and try to like show him the way.
Yeah, essentially, because he kind of just gets wrapped up into the whole story of the game, and like Shella is kind of where it starts because she's in the forest and she's after what I don't know whether it's revealed now, but she's after one of the End Magnus, which is like a special seal that sealed something away. We don't know at this point. We'll find out at the end of the episode.
Yeah, it pretty much is at that moment because I think you fight that boss, which has one.
Right, that's right, yeah. And the pendant is the thing that unlocks it. She's passing as a maid, isn't she, from Alfard at this point, or that's at least what she says she is. Whether she is or not, I don't know. But yeah, so you get the Magnus, kind of, and then she gets kidnapped by Giacomo, gets taken off to Furcard, and you have to go and save her from the mansion. And Sadal Sud is quite a short island compared to most of the other ones, I would say. There's not too much going on here. It's kind of like it is like Irani, isn't it? It's like a starting island and things like that. But things start to open up a little bit.
Yeah, like the mansion, like, not to bring up Chrono Cross again, but it's like very much reminded me of like Viper Manor.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played Chrono Cross after Baten Kaitos, so I wish I'd had like this prior knowledge going into it. I've not really thought of comparing the two too much, but yeah, it definitely is like that. And there's some really interesting characters in Furcard, like Pololo the Third, who maybe has the worst voice acting in this game, along with one of the other kids on Anue Nue. But then this is where one of the bigger side quests start as well, and is this a Monolith thing? Just really, really big, long side quests? Because it certainly is in Xenoblade, but I don't know about Xenosaga, obviously, and Somabringer and a couple of other things. Or it's not in Project Cross Zone either, I don't think. But yeah, the family tree side quest is a really cool side quest, I think. And it's just, I think this game is so like obsessed with collecting things, like, you've got so many different stores of books and items, and we'll get into Magnus in a bit, because Magnus, we're referring to it on and off, are the cards that basically collect essence called Magna Essence, and you can trap everything in there, from like water to flames to clouds and everything. And they're even what you use in battle. They are the essence of the world, basically. And yeah, it's just such an interesting system. But yeah, so you get.
Have you ever heard of that kind of that medical physical theory from like revolving around Aladdin and his genie, and what the like physics ramifications of having a genie is, and how, I don't know, I don't want to get into it. It's a fun like rabbit hole, but basically like it would cause worldwide chaos and like a physical like breakdown of the physical world. Anyway, point is, like, thinking of like how the genie dresses up Aladdin and brings like all of those dancers in that huge parade into Agrabah, and it's like, are those real people? Is this material, like, is that made of material elements? Like, is it just an illusion? What is it? Anyway, the Magnus thing reminds me of that. Like, what are the scientific and like the economical ramifications of like being able to trap eggs in a card or like ice or water in a card and just having it on this little card walking around,
or dead birds,
or cookies,
or dead birds, and the fact and some of the battle Magnus, but also the other kind of more world interacty Magnuses, they're like, if you hold on to milk for too long, it'll turn into yogurt and then cheese or something like that. So like there is like still time is still passing in the card, and the processes are still being carried out, even though it's in this little card.
Yeah,
it's a fun idea that is also like maybe a little bit too fun to think about too much.
I know, I wish they went into it more. And actually, again, you brought up, like, maybe one of my favorite things about this game is how it uses, like, as you said, if you have a bottle of milk in a card, it will turn into cheese or yogurt next and keep going. And there's so many different things, like Battle Magnus do the same. I think
you can have a healing fruit Magnus that then turns rotten, and then it's like a poison card you can play on an enemy.
Yeah, it's such a clever idea. And you've got like books that change every 20 minutes, and it goes in your in-game timer. So yeah, there's things that change. I think the longest changing item is 3 weeks of in-game time. So I brought this up either during the quiz episode last year or on 250. It might have been both. But there is an item that doesn't fully develop until you hit like 300 hours. So that's like 3 weeks. 3 weeks of time. It's a speedrun category as well. Like 100% Baten Kaitos. The world record is something like 342 hours. So
that's right. You were who I heard that from.
Yeah, I remember that. Oh.
Yeah, it's such a cool idea, and I think it plays really well into like everything, because you have to resource manage. And like, let's go on to Diadem, because I know there is, well, once you get to the end of Sadal Sud, you rescue Shella from the mansion. You have to fight Giacomo, which, you know, you're only on the first island. You're probably still getting used to the battle system, and we'll jump into that in a little bit. But the fight with Giacomo is not particularly easy, especially when you're limited on like elements. And again, you're still getting used to you've not had a 2-person party really. You've had one fight with Shella, and now all of a sudden you've got to learn how to manage 2 people and also manage 2 decks. But yeah. But yeah, moving on to...
Yeah, it's the classic JRPG thing where, like, after you deal 150 HP of damage, he's like, I'll come back to you later. I gotta go.
Yeah.
And it's like, you win the battle.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, it does. Well, so many games do that. But yeah, jumping over to Diadem, which I want to jump ahead slightly because there is a dungeon called the Cloud Passage, and the clouds melt in your Magnus slots, don't they? Like, they disappear after a certain amount of time, and I think, again, at Furcard, the water gets, like, stale, and that just changes the quality of it. So, yeah, it runs through pretty good. But yeah, Diadem is where things start to open up, and again, taking a slight detour, this is probably the first time I noticed how really gorgeous this game is. Like, the map detail is so good. Yeah, Diadem is a really good example. And almost, like, everywhere feels so unique in Baten Kaitos. Like, Diadem is, like, pink clouds, and Anue is flora and fauna, and Mira is... I don't know how to describe Mira, but we'll get there eventually. It's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, Diadem's probably my favorite of the floating islands, because just the billowing clouds and smoke and everything just looks it's so beautiful.
Yeah, as you approach Castle Elnath, and you know that towers over the main city in Diadem, it's like this just unbelievable pre-rendered, just like really soft clouds in like a perpetual sunrise, like pink and purple. And then the thing about the backgrounds in this game is that they're all animated, and it does a lot to give a lot of depth and life to it. And so the clouds are kind of like, they're kind of flowing downward off of the architectural features of the castle.
Oh, yeah.
It's completely spectacular.
Yeah, it's that and the wind cave as well, where, like, it's like spilling down off the map there. So, yeah, it's so pretty. Yeah, this is, like, one of the last games, as well as the prequel, that I remember having pre-rendered backdrops in. Like, it felt like the PlayStation 2 GameCube era was where they kind of faded off, and they're like my favorite things ever. We don't need them anymore, but I love them and I want them forever. Like, you know, again, to make the Chrono Cross references, like, these match Chrono Cross in like terms of beauty, I think they are stunning, and there's so many different varieties of location and stuff that it just looks amazing. So yeah, but once you get to Diadem, the fishing village, which the name escapes me, unfortunately, you have to go to
Nashira,
the Celestial...
I think.
Nashira, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. You have to go to the Celestial River after meeting Leavitt, who is a soldier from the Imperial capital of Alfard, or the Empire Alfard, and then you bump into Gibari, and Gibari is your typical dad party member, but he's so cool. I loved Gibari.
He just looks like old man Waka. Like if Waka from Final
He
Fantasy X
does!
got older.
He
Oh
does,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It was definitely like we played Final Fantasy X. Yeah, he's great. I love. I mean, as a character, he's one of my favorites too. So he's a great addition to the party there.
Yeah, he is really good. Good defensively, good attacking wise, and the Celestial River is kind of a bit of a detour. Like Gibari agrees to take you to the castle and Sheliak if you help him calm the Celestial River. Then this is where there's a lot of dungeons in this game that have like weird mechanics and things, and I always remember the Celestial River, it's kind of like a stopgap, but like, once you beat the boss in this dungeon, its corpse floats down the river and stops the current partway down. And also, part of this dungeon, like, loops underneath another dungeon as well, and like, there probably is another example in all the stuff I've played. I can't think of many games where, like, you go into another dungeon from another angle, but don't go into it, if that kind of makes sense. Like, you're just underneath the cloud passage as you go through.
Yeah, Celestial River is under Cloud Passage. Yeah, that's right. Because
Yeah.
you can see one of the family tree super long side quest people like hanging on for dear life underneath you while you're walking across the Cloud Passage.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been doing most of the family tree this time. I've done it before. It's a very long side quest and very involved at times. Like, especially
Yeah.
later on, you get some really particular requests. You can tell who they are. Like, they've all got bracelets, and also, like, how is this man got like 50 children? I have no idea. It was spread across the entire world. Who knows?
Well, he's been married like 4 times or whatever. Like
Yeah.
his ex-spouses are always like, I'm not signing this until you do something, unless you do such and such thing for me. And that was when I was like, maybe I won't do this.
Oh no, it's certainly really interesting, but yeah, it's just so
Like
involved.
I don't even know this guy, you know?
Yeah, and you don't get a convenient way to like explore until later on in the game
Yeah.
anyway. So
Yeah, Disc 1 is
Yeah.
very linear, so trying to do that is, like, you have to wait so long.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, the Celestial River is kind of a stopgap until you get to Sheliak. But in between that, the fishing village gets overrun by the Empire, and you have to escape through the Cloud Passage, and then to the castle town, where you overhear Leavitt having a bit of an argument with another soldier, and that's also in the introduction. Like, there are so many things in that opening cutscene that I go back to and pick out from the game. I'm like, you're really just going to dump hints like that, really obviously? But yeah, Sheliak is, other than the castle, it's pretty normal looking. It's similar to Furcard in a way, but then you have to go inside the castle, and again, I've already referenced gimmicks, but Baten Kaitos has lots of dungeons with lots of gimmicks, and Sheliak Castle is maybe the first most notable one with the soldiers minigame.
Yeah, I forgot all about this minigame.
It takes so long as well. Like, if you don't know what you're doing,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's a pain in the butt. But like, it's essentially a maths game. Like, a senior knight is worth like 8 points, and then you've got your squires, which are worth 1 point. So as long as you like evenly distribute them, it's fine. But if you don't know what you're doing and you use up all of them, and you have to fight tons and tons and tons of fights, which are not the easiest thing in the world. But yeah, I think now is probably a good time to talk about combat. I know we've only got half the party, but we can kind of jump. We're going to jump around a lot in this episode.
Sure.
So
I mean, the combat doesn't change that much when you get more people. We just have more people.
exactly, yeah. So essentially the basics are you have a party of 3 maximum, and each character has their own deck. I think it's 25 to start off with, and you pick up class up items throughout the game, which can expand your deck up to 60 or 50, I think. And your characters get an attacking move just like you do in a turn-based RPG, and they get a defensive move. But the difference is that you can actually defend on those turns. And depending on what character you've got or what character is being attacked, you can use weapons to defend and gain elemental bonuses or elemental resistances and things like that. So yeah, it's a really, really unique system, and it does take it takes a while to get used to, but
it's a lot more fluid than I thought it would be. There's a lot of room to mess around with it. Like, I find that if sometimes I found it, for example, expedient to use up some useless cards in the defensive phase just to get them out of the deck or out of my hand, so I can hopefully get some better cards in my hand for the next round. And if let's say I get a bad, and this can happen where you have kind of bad luck and you can't, you don't have any defensive cards in your hand. Obviously, if you did, you'd want to use those. But if you don't, you'll just get rid of maybe a healing card that you don't think you'll need, or maybe whatever other kind of card that maybe just imposes a status effect on your enemy. And then by doing so, you can just kind of cull your hand of the cards you don't think you'll need, and hopefully get the ones that you want. So there's, ideally for every single move of every single turn, you'll have a card that corresponds. But if not, there's still kind of a strategy to it that I was surprised by.
Yeah, and the other thing about the system is the combo system, where each card has a number on it, and you can pull off these really either more stronger attacks or heal yourself better if you follow either do the number the cards in order, sequential order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or if you do multiple pairs of cards that have the number 1 on it. I thought that added an interesting layer of strategy that was really cool. There were times where I was healing, and I would heal with say a bottle of milk that only heals 100 HP, but if I have this useless card that does nothing, that I can have the same number or something, I can increase that 100 by a certain amount of percentage of, and it was really cool system.
So that's the layer that I was talking about before that I'm not actively engaging with.
Right.
But you do often just stumble into it.
Oh yeah, there's times where I accidentally do it, and it's oh cool, that's great.
Yeah, and it is great. It's way super great. It's way
it's
it
broken.
ups the potency of your cards by several times. But I do want to just mention that I'm not really actively engaging with that part of it at the moment. But the combat is still satisfying, I find. So if anyone is worried about needing to crunch all those numbers, you don't
have to, because sometimes it's actually been a detriment, because I've get so focused getting combos that I'll accidentally heal the enemy.
Or I'll throw a turn because I don't have the number 3 and I've got 1, 2, and 4, and I'm or something like that. Yeah, I totally agree. The first couple of times I played this game, I didn't fully engage in the number system, and I do now sometimes, but again, it kind of trips me up occasionally. But it does add an extra layer, and it is helpful, but it is absolutely more than beatable without engaging in it. You don't have to, and it just adds that extra layer of depth. It's more worthwhile getting involved in the elemental side of things, because that's where you do, you get your plus 80% and your plus 30% on attacks and that. So there are 6 elements. So there's fire and water, which correspond with each other. There is light and dark, which correspond with each other. And there's wind and chronos, or time, which correspond with each other. And 9 times out of 10... an enemy will have 1 or 2 of those elements, and they'll be weak to, if they're water type, they're weak to fire, or if they're light type, they're weak to dark, and it will vary. They tend to have a mix of weaknesses, but you have to pick them out or take a photograph of them. And that's really interesting, because sometimes you can heal them, and especially if you attack a boss that's got a darkness resistance, and you attack them with a dark sword, and they take they've got a minus 80% resistance. They'll take 80% less damage is a lot, a big chunk to lose, really. So that's the side that's more worth engaging with, I'd say. But it makes things very interesting because you need to kind of keep a balance on all elements while also shuffling around ones that you don't need. Like, generally, the first time I played it, again, like, I didn't really... I sort of engaged with it. I knew what I was doing, but I was never willing... You know, I always had to have one of each element of each card kind of thing. Especially for...
Same.
Especially for, like, Sheller and Mizuti, who rely... Mizuti's the 6th character.
Those are purely elemental attacks by them.
Exactly, yeah. So you have to think that you have to compensate, but you don't. Like, it's worth micromanaging your deck to a degree, but you never fully need to do it. Like, you can get by without all of these systems, and yeah, it's fairly adaptable. It's not... There are some big difficulty spikes, especially at the beginning of Disc 2, but yeah, it's not...
So just as we come off the battle system, I want to mention real quick how badass it is that Leavitt uses trumpets to fight.
Yeah.
Like assault trumpets and like different brass instruments that are weaponized.
Definitely. Yeah, that took me by surprise.
Awesome.
I think it's really cool. And Leavitt's probably my favourite character to use in battle because, like, not many of the... Other than Sheller and Mizuti, like, light and dark elemental stuff is kind of hard to come by. Like... I guess Callus kind of sticks to wind and Chronos. He's got fire and water as well, but they've all got a bit of everything. And another thing, like weapons as well, certain elemental weapons can degrade over time. Like the flame sabers, the fire burns out of them after a couple of hours and they just turn into regular sabers. So yeah, that's another way you can kind of like reshuffle your deck and things like that. And yeah, characters like Leavitt, Sheller and Mizuti, you can't guard with any of their weapons either, so you have to use armor. So the percentage of like defensive to attacking needs to be slightly different than, say, Callus and Gabari, who can guard with about 90% of their weapons, I would say, and Savina, who can guard with about 30 or 40% of them. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on, and the bigger your deck gets, the more interesting it gets, and the higher combos you can build and whatever. But yeah, Diadem kind of wraps up relatively quickly, but King Ladekan kind of feels like your first ally outside of the party, and Callus, again, kind of like kicks up a bit of a stink here, because he's just kind of being dragged along. Like, we kind of get to the feel of like Sheller is going around to unseal these Magnus for some reason to prevent the revival of an ancient god. And back at the fishing village, actually, it was probably a good time to bring it up. You talk to a fortune teller who essentially tells you the history of the world, which is that the world used to have an ocean that was swallowed up by a god called Malpercio. And
Malpercio.
Yes, very Italian inspired. It's not an actual word though. I thought it would have been. It's meant to mean like bad god, I'm sure, but yeah. So yeah, the ocean is sucked up by this god, and he is sealed away by 5 heroes or some wizards, and that's what the cards are. They are the seals, for now anyway. So yeah, Sheller's mission is to kind of collect all of these, or that's what she wants to do. Whatever, you know, there's a lot of things going on later on, and she plays a pivotal part in Disc 2, so yeah. But unless anyone's got anything important to say about Diadem, we can move on to the next island.
It's pretty.
Just that you fight a big beetle.
You do. You fight a big beetle at the
Empire. The Empire has mechs, but they're beetles.
They're all gold as well. Very shiny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the beetle outside the castle's not too hard. Iron Beetle and Cloud Passage can be a pain. I've never had too much trouble with it, but yeah, I'm getting the hang of things by this point, usually, and yeah, everything falls into place. But yeah, Ladekan's like your first ally, really, outside of the main party, and he's really kind of fighting in your corner. You go get the next card. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say he's dreamy. That's it.
He is dreamy. He's also got a good voice, actually. I'll say he's got one of the better voices in the game. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
I'll have to look him up.
But yeah, so you get the next card, or you don't, because it blows away. This game's got a habit of you, like, getting the item and then losing it every single time, and it's just like, come on, what are we doing? But yeah, like, Leavitt is immediately pinned as kind of a traitor, because obviously he works for the Empire, and he feels really guilty about it. And Ladekan is really good. Ladekan, Sheller, and Gibari are really good at comforting him, but Callus is very abrasive with him and very much like, oh, I don't trust you kind of thing. And he carries this through, again, till the next island. So we go to Anue, and Again, another gorgeous place, and Corellia is a bit different from Ladakhan. Like, she's one of those, like, well-actually people who's very neutral and very, like, I'm not going to do anything. And this is the first time you meet Gelderblame, who is, for lack of better word, kind of grotesque, kind of horrible, makes your skin crawl, kind of villain. But yeah, this is, like, the first time we've really seen him, and the progression through Anue is really strange, because it kind of just is like, oh, you have to go here, or why I think you come out of the castle and you bump into a woman and she's like, you should go to the Ancient Library of Magic. Like, it's really convenient that we should go in this direction now. I mean, it's obviously a mislead because, you know, that is where Falon, who is another one of these three people, along with Amy and Giacomo, who are pivotal to Callus's backstory. And again, the Ancient Library of Magic is another really strange dungeon that you have to do, like, book puzzles. Why has every library got, like, the same puzzle where you get, like, the book that's like a history book, geography book, literacy book, or something like that, and you have to go and put them in the right coloured shelf.
Yeah, oh god, put the literacy book at the you gotta show the literary section door, the literature book.
Yeah.
So that it's like, oh, okay, isn't that what it is? Like, you have to get the right book to the right place to open the seals to get
We're
past or something.
librarians at this point.
Yeah, we are librarians.
Being attacked by the books, but the books are actively antagonizing us.
Oh, the book enemies here are annoying. They're the ones that are, like, resistant to everything, aren't they? Or they're resistant to everything but one element, and then it's like 100% weak. But
all I remember about them is that you're trying to find these books as part of the quest, and you'll pull out a book from the shelf, and it's like, oh, this is a bad guy.
Or
attack you.
Sometimes I would be dumb and just like, hey, did I already check this shelf? Book attack.
yeah.
Oh, I backtracked in here so much. I got so lost in trying to just kind of, not lost, but just trying to find my way. I found pretty difficult in this one. And then at one point you have to climb up on top of the bookshelves to navigate.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Yeah, it's one, as much as I love pre-rendered backdrops, without, like, you know how in FF7 you can press the select button and it'll show you, like, the arrows for where you can climb up things and that? I want that function in this game, because like, I love pre-rendered backdrops, but you can't always tell what you can interact with and what you can't interact with, like, unless it's animated. But yeah, the library is one thing.
Well, I had that trouble with the next dungeon, Hollow Jungle, where I just could not tell where the heck I was going. Yeah,
Hollow Jungle. Hollow Jungle in this game is at least better than it in Origins with the Hollow Bird. That is a nightmare to fight. But yeah, like, I had the same problems. Every time I do the Ancient Library of Magic, I get lost. It doesn't matter how many times I've done it. And the really, I say annoying thing, because in other RPGs I'm like, I want the enemies to respawn all the time. Enemies respawn if you go off screen every single time, especially the books. It's so annoying. Like, you can never get around anywhere without being attacked. But at least they're not random encounters, I guess. But yeah, so,
and here they might as well be.
Yeah, they may as well be in this dungeon. A few places as well, definitely. Like the Mirror Dungeon towards the end of the disc. But yeah, so we go through the Hollow Jungle afterwards. Not too much happens there. You have to get one of the stones to direct your way through. And then we get to Opu, the waterfall village, and there is a little quest here, I think, with Mayfi, who is the other kid I was talking about with the really terrible voice. But yeah, you have the celestial cookie. Is this where it starts? Someone will have to remind me if it's here.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say she's perfectly charismatic with the voices off.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're just kind of waiting for. Well, is this where we're waiting for Savina, or?
That's right. Yeah.
No, this is where we find it. Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This is where we're waiting for.
It's like, while we're waiting, let's do these 3 quests.
That's right, yeah. Savina saves you in the library because you fight Falon and he, like, stuns you, doesn't he? You beat Falon in a boss, but actually you haven't beaten him because he's more powerful than you, so he's going to knock you out, and then Savina comes along to save you, kind of thing. And yeah, so she's like, come to the waterfall village, which is why you end up going through the jungle to get there. Yeah, the Celestial Cookie quest is interesting, definitely. I think Pete, you have...
I love this quest.
It's cool, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if this quest is one and the same with the actual parts in the village that I really resonated with. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, it is, because the whole point is to bring okay, so Mayfi is like an acolyte of the celestial tree.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in Anwenwe worships the celestial tree that is supposed to blossom every certain period of time, but hasn't in like generations or like over a generation or around a generation.
Yeah,
for a while.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
And
every
everyone's very concerned.
30 years, I think.
Every 30 years. Yeah. And everyone's very concerned because it's been way more than 30 years and no one knows what's going on. And meanwhile, the stuff with the Empire is like worrying everyone. And there's a young acolyte of like whatever priesthood or like religious order it is that are the caretakers for the celestial tree. And her name is Mayfi. And her grandma, she lives with her grandma who's sick. And her whole thing is she wants to, you guys can stop me or correct me if I'm getting any details wrong, but she wants to pray to the celestial tree to be able to heal her grandma, and she believes that the blossoms from the celestial tree can be made into a medicine that can help her grandma.
Yeah.
The other part of this is that the Opu has this big water wheel that drives kind of their whole industry, and it's stuck right now. So okay. I'm trying to just remember what's going on. I'm looking at my notes here.
No, you're good. You're right. You're right so far, definitely.
Yeah. So there's this at the water wheel. This is one of the more charming parts of this particular part. There's this little kid who, about the age of Mayfi, who's the water wheel's principal engineer, and many children are very accomplished individuals in this continent.
Yes.
And so the point is, like, you go to the kind of where the Celestial Blossom Festival is, which is another section of the island. There's a guy there that sells cookies, but he says, I don't have any more flour to make you cookies. Mayfi wants cookies because she believes that if she offers these Celestial Blossom Seed cookies to the altar, then it will help heal her grandma. But what she actually does is she wants to pray for the water wheel to be fixed. So she's not asking for like a miracle out of nowhere. She's asking for the water wheel to be fixed so that she can use the celestial blossoms, grind them up in the mill to create the medicine that she wants to use. So she wants to like put action to her wish, basically, right?
Yeah.
And so long story short, you acquire the cookies after a while of like finding seeds, getting them made, take them to the guy, he makes them for you. You give them back to Mayfi, and then she places them on the altar, and at that moment, the water wheel starts working again, and she's so happy, and it's a very touching thing. It's kind of like, I don't know, if you've ever, if anyone has been in, like, religious circles before, there's sometimes is the concept of, like, having faith, but then there's, like, the action that you should put in, or else your faith might not work out for you, and that's kind of like a cool story of that. And there's also this concept of, like, angels or like people who are divinely sent to help you are often the people around you and your friends. And so the water wheel starts working out of nowhere, and she's so happy and she runs away. And then this kid comes out from like a hidden passage, and he says, "Yeah, I fixed it like a couple hours ago, but I just wanted to wait for her to do that so that she would be happy." And it turns out this kid has like this big crush on her.
Yeah.
But is too shy to like tell her, but instead like performs almost a miracle just because he likes her. And I just thought that whole side quest was really neat. It was very touching. It resonated a lot with me. And you know, it like there's a lot of beautiful close look moments to this game like that.
Yeah,
regarding individual characters that kind of come and go.
Yeah, it's really endearing. Like, you get real snapshots of every single island and every single culture, you know, like you've got Anna at the fishing village, who you get a real sense of like community around that bar, and you've got Reblis as well and his rivalry with Gibari, and they both come into play later on in the game as well.
There's one quick thing I want to mention that's pretty critical about the side quest too, is that Mayfi's idea of like faith or whatever, it kind of is juxtaposed by Corellia's idea, because Corellia's thing is she's like a total centrist and doesn't want to do anything and is completely inert because she believes in fate totally.
Yeah.
And so you know, at the end of this time on this island, we help the blossoms on the celestial tree to bloom, and even then, Queen Corellia is like, "Yeah, but faith can't be stopped."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, it's just fate. Look at this thing that happened when it was literally like you and your party that made it happen. But she was like, "Yeah, man, fate." You know,
she comes off that luckily, but yeah, she's definitely. I like Corellia, but I only like Corellia towards the end, like especially after Ladakan, who is very much a do it kind of person, and she's just like, no, I'll just leave it, you know, I can't interfere, we're a neutral party, we can't do anything, like, no. And like Corellia, even throughout Anuinui's story, like she changes slightly towards the end because she senses something different within Callus, and she senses something different in the world, and she has a vision when you eventually get the End Magnus, which you climb up the top of the celestial tree and that's where it is. But yeah, I think the juxtaposition between like fate and religion and religious beliefs is really important, because it's like this is like the only place where they worship anything. Like considering like there's a sealed god, there's not a lot of religious worship, but when it comes in, it's really poignant, especially when you put it against like all of these people think that, you know, because the world has been reduced to floating islands, that Malpertia was going to get resurrected. Everyone's kind of some people are sort of resigned to that, and everyone just wants things to go their own course, but Callus or Shella is trying to stop that from happening, at least anyway. It's the Empire's ambition is like acting upon fate and things. But yeah, so you climb the celestial tree eventually after saving Mayfi climbs up the tree and you have to rescue her, but she's trying to get the seeds again, isn't she, for something else? And then you fight the boss there. Savina gets into a fight with you because Leavitt recognizes her from the Empire, and
she was a soldier or like an officer or whatever.
Yeah, I think she sells it as a mercenary, doesn't she? After she was a soldier and then she was a mercenary.
Also a small-time gardener.
Apparently, yeah, she's multi-talented. Hey, she's cool as hell. I love her.
Yes,
Savina's cool. Savina is probably the coolest character for me. Like, she might be my favorite. Yeah, she's a martial artist. She's amazing.
Martial artist female characters are always great. Martial arts is always great anyway, but yeah.
You can get like 12 hit combos with her, no problem.
Oh yeah, she takes probably the most adapting too, though, because she's a little bit faster than everybody else.
She is so quick. Like,
that's the thing. There is that real time element where like the timer ticks down for you to pick cards, and yeah, for her it's quick. Yeah,
it's really quick because she moves so much faster than everybody else. But yeah, and she's like the opposite of Leavitt in that she specializes in fire and water, and those are the only two elements she ever gets. Like, whereas Leavitt is only light and dark, and there's no one that just gets wind and chrono. But yeah, Nue, in terms of like overall plot stuff, like things just kind of move along steadily. This is the first card you manage to keep for the time being as well. So after Queen Corellia has a vision, you leave Nue for a very unusual mini game. Another one of this game's many strange things.
Another one I forgot.
I forgot about this too, even though I've played this game like 3
is this
times.
Star Fox? Is this where Star Fox comes into play?
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes, I love this one.
It's so cool, isn't it? And this might be my favorite part of the entire game. Not like the mini game itself, but like everything surrounding Mira.
It's like, yeah, Baten Kaitos is pretty good, but the Star Fox section is what I love.
What can I say? I like Star Fox. I've only played a few of them. There's only a few of them anyway. But yeah.
Yep.
So you go along to Mira, which is like this pocket dimension, so you can't get there by normal means, and you have to go through some kind of mysterious passage. You get attacked by Giacomo, too many G's who work for Alphard, and you meet Mizuti, who is the absolute best.
A precious treasure.
She is I say she, that's a big spoiler, isn't it? They are, the great Mizuti is a treasure. And they offer to take you across the Passage of Souls, I think it might be called. And yeah, what is this? Why is it doing the near thing where it changes genre halfway through the game and it just throws you into a like on-rails shooter, which if you don't kill things, you have to fight random encounters.
It's probably more like, isn't it more like a Panzer Dragoon? Don't you like locking on and releasing laser blasts? Yeah. And then if you fail, they just like get on your ship and it's a battle.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, it's It's neat. I enjoyed it a lot too. I think it was fun.
Yeah, it's fairly inconsequential, but it's kind of cool. I like how I like it when games throw in really weird elements.
And the music in this section is wild. It is so good.
I can't remember the name of the track, but I know exactly what one it is. Yeah.
And it looks cool too, because it's like this interdimensional kind of like rift, and so there's all this like Mario Kart Rainbow Road stuff going on in the middle of space,
and at the end of it, you fight a Gnosis, which is an enemy from Xenosaga.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't an exact Gnosis from the series, but from Xenosaga, but it's named Gnosis, which is a reference, which is cool.
It's a definite reference.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The less we say about the design, the better, though. Like,
oh, it's foul. Right?
Oh yeah.
Well, you went there.
You said that. That's fine. You said it in the most polite way possible, though. So you get points
Said what?
for that.
What are you guys talking about? I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, it's also not the only one you fight. So never mind. So yeah, you get to Mira, and Mira has got different world map music, and every village on Mira is a treat. I love Mira.
One
and
of them literally, yes.
Literally
So
a
it's
treat.
called.
Go on, sorry.
I was just saying it's called Mira because it's like the land of illusion, right?
Yeah.
Mira is like Latin for look and like seeing or whatever. So
Yeah.
there, as you walk around the world map, it'll cycle between two states of like the path appears and then the path disappears that you're allowed to walk on, and it's like a 2-second cycle, but it's like, oh wait, which one am I going? Oh, okay, the path is clearing. I can see where I'm going now.
Yeah, it's really unusual. Like, I think when you get off the ship, or you're they're not called ships, are they? I don't know what it is. Like, you ride on various different strange animals.
They're like semi-organic flying machine animal things.
Yeah. Yeah, like when you get off, like everything's clouded over, isn't it? Nothing gets revealed until you're like on the spot that you need to be, whereas you can sort of tell on the other islands where everything is. But yeah, Mirror is so cool. And Parnasse, which is literally a treat area, is literally a confectionery village made out of sweets and cakes, which is incredible. And I love it. And yeah, again, like there's like another like mini introduction to some characters here. Like you meet Trill, who is one of Callus's friends, who you get like a little bit of backstory about his past, because Callus is from Mira. So this is kind of the first time you get a sense of who he really is. And you also meet the two confectioners, the one of the chocolate one and the one at the pastry one, and
the two rival confectioners is good.
It's amazing.
Good storyline.
Yeah. But most importantly, in Parnasse, you meet Melodia. And Melodia it feels like she comes out of nowhere. You feel like she's going to be one of these incidental characters. She kind of lasts into the end of the disc, at least, anyway, because Mira's the last place you go. And yeah, I'm not going to say anything now, but there's things I didn't spot, essentially, is all I'm going to say. But
yeah, things are revealed a little later that I then noticed in retrospect.
Which is amazing, because, like, there are... do you know what? Let's just save it, because I'm going to give away something if I say any more than that. Right. Don't listen to me. Right, so then you kind of go off onto a lead after resolving the pastry conflict. You go to... I think this is one of my favourite dungeons in anything ever. The Garden. What's it called? Detorn? The Mystical Garden.
I just have it written down as the Tower of Druaga dungeon.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's so
there it is.
cool.
There's a drop.
There it is. Namco do such cool things with their RPGs, because they do it in Tales games as well. And I say Namco, this is published by Namco. But they always drop big references into their games.
Everyone's belt in Tales games has to be Pac-Man eating the belt.
There's always a Klonoa reference. There's always a Pac-Man reference. There's always a Mr. Driller reference somewhere. It's great. And I think Namco, though they published it, I believe they threw a lot... they gave a lot of money, or they put a lot of trust in Monolith Soft. Like, they were the first developers to go like, oh, we really trust you, we've got really similar ideas, let's back you up. And I guess, interestingly, like, I didn't say this at the beginning, Xenosaga was developed by a lot of the veterans on Monolith Soft, whereas Baten Kaitos was worked on by a lot of new up-and-coming developers.
Yeah, it's also, they were in co-production with Tricrescendo as well.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. Tricrescendo are really interesting historically because they branched off of Wolf Team. And I'm going to plug an episode I was on a couple of years ago. We did like an analysis of Wolf Team and Namco Bandai's Tales Studio in 2019 because so many big studios came off of the back of that split, like Tricrescendo, Tri-Ace, the people who worked on Star Ocean and things. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. We do touch on Baten Kaitos there as well, and Eternal Sonata, which is another, just a solely developed Tricrescendo game. So, yeah. But yeah, this tower...
So when you walk into the Torn, it initially, you know, it's a really unusual dungeon, but it's a dungeon. You're walking around in Baten Kaitos land, and you're picking up items, and it does a thing where there's like colored blocks that you can change in one of the rooms to make them either to like shift the gravity on them or something. And you can be like walking around on the ceiling. Maybe if you remember more, you can talk more about that. But you're changing gravity. You're changing gravity only for certain objects. You're collecting water to weigh certain objects down more to make them act in ways you want them to. Is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then you break into literally Tower of Druaga, where it's like it's a top-down view of Kalas's model running around the game Tower of Druaga, but the map is all just straight graphics from Tower of Druaga. So this 256 color like pixelated map, but you're like 3D model of Kalas is running around and doing random battles with the enemies from Tower of Druaga that manifest in like the 3D models in the battle mode or whatever. It's so weird.
It's so weird. It's so, yeah, it is amazing. Like it's it's such a cool little reference. Like, I say little reference. It's a big reference, like an entire dungeon film, like, framed around it. And yeah, no, you're pretty much you've hit it on the head really, Pete. Like, it's a gravity-based dungeon that you have to remember where each door goes. Cause like, obviously, cause you're going between these 3D areas and the 2D area of the Druaga references. Like, you can't ever
The
match...
Druaga is like another dimension. So if you come from the Druaga area and you exit that from a certain door, you'll be in a different door in like the real world.
Yeah,
exactly.
That took me quite a while to get through.
I got pretty lost. Yeah.
I got lost here, but
you collect the items from Tower of Druaga, like the rocket boots and the pickaxe and the sword and whatever, and the key, and it's really cool.
It's just so cool. Yeah, like, I got lost here as well, but I wasn't as frustrated as I was with the Ancient Library of Magic, because, I don't know, I was just kind of in love with it. I was just like, yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Delightful.
You can make me as mad as you want. This is a Tower of Druaga dungeon, and I love it. Yeah, it's great. It's such a cool idea.
I didn't like those... I didn't write down the name of the monster, but there's these gross hand monsters in the dungeon that really creep me out.
Oh, they're disgusting. There's some really bizarre enemy design. Mm-hmm. They are tough, yeah. They're resistant to so many different things. And they're really hard because you have to go in and out of the scale, because they walk around the scales, don't they? And that you have to fill up with water. So, like, they're so hot, you're always going to hit one. Like, you're, because there's like a delay and like, there's like you jump between platforms, don't you? There's like a platform in the middle that you have to press A to, but there's a delay in when Kalas moves to when you press the button. So you'll always get hit basically. But yeah, you go to the garden to try and find the fourth End Magnus, and surprise, it's a fake one because it's literally a giant card. So you go back to Parnas, you get imprisoned.
Oh, the boss is the card.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That forgot. Oh, yeah. Because then, as you do damage to the boss, like parts of the card start to like get cut off of it or whatever. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool boss, but yeah, nothing comes out of it, unfortunately. Just
it's a ruse.
Oops. Yeah, and it's still really interesting though. Like I said, like the enemy design in this game is bizarre, from Gnosis to these hands to even the slimes like feel really cartoony. They feel very out of place. Are they from Tower of Druaga? It's been a while since I've played Tower of Druaga.
Yeah, because you fight them in Tower of Druaga, and yeah, the slimes are in Tower of Druaga. I'm pretty sure. Now you're making me doubt. I think so.
They feel like they would be like for a 1984 RPG or action game. It feels pretty safe to assume. Yeah. So then you get imprisoned in Parnas, and Gibari literally eats his way out of a house, which is incredible.
Yes, and like, no one wants to help.
Right? Like, I mean, I like confectionery, sure, but not like an entire like foundationary wall of it, for sure.
Oh, man.
It's
That's so, like, why don't you think of that when you're imprisoning these people? Like, I don't know.
well, this is the thing. Like, yeah, like why would you? I don't know what logic felt like. I mean, I guess the guards are from another town, but surely you'd look at this place and be like, "Oh, okay, it must be made out of cake or something." Like,
Well, and are we at the storybook town yet, or is that after this?
we're going there now, so don't
All
worry,
right.
you're not getting too
Yeah.
ahead of yourself.
Sorry about that.
No, you're
Sorry.
not. Well, it's literally we're literally going there. Yeah.
All right.
Good. Reverence is another really unique town. There's only 2 unique towns because the third town on this island is kind of normal. There is another really cool town in Origins. I'll just throw in. I don't remember the name of it. I think Tyler, you might have brought this up. The Clay Town.
Yes.
Yeah. So there is another place that's like it looks like clay models, and it's so cool. But
It's so awesome.
yeah, Reverence is fun. Who thought of all of this? Like, it's such a cool idea to have like this place that's based on like looking and visuals, but changes the visual style of everything up so much. Like, you've got everything from 8-bit graphics to paper books to children's books to sweets to normal towns to the last dungeon of Disc 1, which we'll get into in a bit.
And there's a through line through it. It makes sense how you go from one to the other. It should be a mess. Like, this, it shouldn't work, but it does very, very well.
You've accepted it by this point, I think. After being thrown into Jiraga, definitely. Like, I wasn't questioning it. It's more of like oh wow, this is such a cool idea. But yeah, so you meet, I think I've kind of skimmed over one of the fortune tellers, but you meet another fortune teller in this town after doing another side quest. I think you have to go and get something from the garden, don't you? And it makes the clock tower pop out, and you go and meet the witch, and she says something about Callus. She says, she calls him the white-winged dark. No, not the white-winged darkness. I'm getting ahead of myself. She says, I feel no Magnus within him. And actually, I feel like I've missed out a really obvious piece of lore here. Everyone in Baten Kaitos has something called, well, most people in Baten Kaitos have wings. They're called wings of the heart, and they're essentially a manifestation of their personality. The only person who doesn't is Leavitt, but Callus is even more different because he's only got one wing, and that is essentially, that's almost like being the bastard child in like historical fiction, isn't it? Really, like he's basically damned from the get-go. Like,
He's kind of ostracized or
Yeah.
marginalized, almost like in a way that someone with a differing ability might be. It's kind of manifested in my mind in that way, and it actually, you're right, it does have ramifications for later.
Yeah, definitely. And, well, I mean, he has got a second wing. It's a mechanical wing built by his grandfather before his grandfather was murdered. But yeah, like everyone makes a point of it throughout the game, but this is like the first time where someone's gone like, oh, you're Magnus, you don't have a Magnus. And not only is Magnus like the essence of everything, you can pick everything up by the essence, like Magnus, but also every single living thing is Magna or Magnus. So even people, and the fact that Callus doesn't have one suggests something odd about him. And there's a few things throughout Mirror that kind of get dropped that suggest that, you know, Callus's circumstances at the beginning of the game were that he had amnesia, and it's pointing towards something which we don't get answers for in Disc 1, but we definitely get drip-fed some things. So we go to, we find out that Melodia has been kidnapped. This might have happened actually in Parnasse. I think the guards capture you because they think you've kidnapped her, and you get directed to the Shrine of Spirits, which is where Callus, is this where it's revealed now? Callus remembers this place because this is where he was, or at least this is where he was attacked. And it's a pretty straightforward place. You bump into Giacomo and friends there, and you fight another one of these phallic monsters, we'll say. Like, I'm concerned about the geography and the dimensions going on in Mirror, if that's all of the enemies they get, these phallic creatures. But, yeah. It's just bizarre. Like, I don't care about reusing assets, but like reusing a boss asset that quickly and something that noticeable, I was like, definitely had an eyebrow raised even at like 13 years old. But yeah, and so you go to the very last place, which we'll be talking about, which is Balancourt. Here is where Duke Calbrin is. Melodia comes back after you've done a little bit of exploring. This is where Callus is from. And before that, actually, Callus finds out that the Magnus that you got from Inoue has gone missing, and you go on this wild goose chase to find out and see, oh, we must have dropped it. That's the idea. Like, they say, one of us must have dropped it, or Callus was responsible for it. And you go between all the other areas, and you find out none of you've got it, you can't find it, and then this kind of infighting comes in. Like, people blame Callus, people blame Leavitt, people blame Savina, who is also pegged as a traitor at some point, and Shella and Gabari are just trying to keep it together. But yeah, you've lost the card, so, you know, it's not even like, I don't know, it's not even like that bit where you have all the Chaos Emeralds and you lose them in Sonic game. I can't think of a comparison, but yeah, there's a lot of, like, bickering, and the party feel really fractious throughout anyway, because they're just kind of circumstantially together. Like, Callus doesn't want to be there, Shella's on a mission, Gibari is helping her, Savina is curious about the Empire, and Leavitt wants revenge on the Empire to a degree, or at least he wants to find out the truth about what they're going on about, because he was kind of suspicious but still faithful to a degree. At this point, he's not really. Like, he wants to know what's going on and is just scared to go back to Alphard. But you go to Duke Calbrin's Manor, and then you go join up with Mizuti, and is this the weirdest dungeon in the game, maybe? Cockalinth?
So far. Because that...
Yeah,
probably.
That's saying something. Yeah. This place gets a lot of hate online, I found out, and I get why.
What?
It's
I think
overwhelming.
It's, really cool.
It's overwhelming at first, but once you kind of get through it, it's not so bad.
Yeah,
you gotta kind of pay attention. I mean, I have the worst sense of direction of anybody I know, but they specifically put up landmarks to help you orient yourself, and I got turned around one or two times, and you know, sometimes get into battles you don't want to get into, but I didn't think it was that bad at all. I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah,
I think it's really interesting. Again, it just, like, it's nice to go back to this because, you know, there's the long debate of, oh, RPG dungeons are so boring nowadays, and you go back to something like this, which is so unique in its dungeon layouts. Like, there are some really basic ones, you know, the library is pretty common, and the Celestial River doesn't do anything particularly special, and the places in Sad Al Sud don't do anything particularly interesting, but then you've got, like, you know, you're climbing up a tree, or you're going through an old retro game, and there are some later on as well. Like, there's puzzles throughout, basically. Like, this is the most 2000s RPG ever, with all of its, like, dungeon variation and puzzles, and I kind of love it for that, and Cockalinth is just, like, another really cool example. Like, again, I can't think of another game that's done anything like it, like, for better or worse, but, you know, at least it's got something like that for it.
Yeah, so we haven't really said what it is, but pretty much the game just renders itself in, like, this fractured, almost stained glass looking view of, like, 5 or 6 or 7 different little windows, all cut up in weird angles. Yeah,
I think it's called the Dungeon of Mirrors or something, isn't it? Yeah, so it's like a shattered mirror,
called
basically.
What? I didn't hear it. Shattered mirror.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a shattered mirror that's just been, like, put back together in a funny way. Yeah.
Right. So as you're going around, each of the little windows or little, like, pieces of the mirror are basically a totally different camera angle. So you have to orient yourself and try to find out where you're going and where you've been, just by using the sparse kind of landmarks and, you know, trying to figure out which direction your character is facing.
Yeah, it's definitely unique, but no, I'd failed to explain that until that point, so thank you. But yeah, this is kind of the last stop that we're going to make today, but essentially you go down, you fight a fairly easy boss. Mizuti joins your party and you have to try her out, and you find out she's like Shella. She's got more speciality. I'm doing it again. They've got more speciality in Chronos magic than anything else, especially their special moves, which we'll go into probably a bit in Disc 2 when we come back next week. But yeah, Giacomo and that turn up. The pendant is stolen, so not only do you not have any of the cards, you now have no way to unlock the Magnus, the End Magnus, and you go back up top because Mizuti has to absorb this kind of nebulous power that's leaked out of the dungeon, and Duke Calbrin reveals that essentially the End Magnus, rather than just being seals on this god, are actually the body parts of this god, which is kind of disgusting to think about, but like it feels really obvious. You know when you're playing something and it explains something to you and you're like, oh yeah, because like the cards are called ar, le, che, and bo, which mean arm, leg, chest, body, and the last one is
I find that so absurd.
Yeah.
But kind of funny.
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't realise it the first time, and now I'm like, oh yeah, he is head, which is the last one.
Yeah, is head.
It's ridiculous. But yeah, like this Balanquoire is like you start to get bits about Callus, and you start to get more about the history of the world. Like, you know, the god was sealed away by these wizards and guardians, and there's a line that the witch says, or the old lady says, and the story she recites is like, beware the white-winged darkness. But she also says that the god will not be whole again, or something like that. Like, even if the 5 parts are put back together, that's not the whole of the god. So, you know, we're still trying to stop the revival of this ancient god, but it's not going to be complete without something. What that white-winged darkness is, we'll find out next week. Disc 1 is kind of pretty linear. I think next week we'll be able to be way more broad. Like, there's lots of things I haven't even brought up. Like, there's lots of weird mechanical things, like save points and leveling up and the constellations and stuff, which...
Oh, yeah. I do want to talk about save points.
We'll do that next week, because there's a particular dungeon that is really annoying if you don't save and level up outside of it, because you get locked into it, and... It's a hard boss at the end, but yeah, definitely. It's got some backwards elements to it, but it's all really interesting, and it feels like we've been on a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and I apologise for that, but definitely we should be able to, like, really branch out and go absolutely ridiculous next episode. So, yeah, I mean, what I guess, Pete, before we, like, sign off and roll into things, like, I know you're a bit further ahead, but, like, what do you think is going to happen, like, essentially on Disc 2, or what do you expect to happen, maybe?
I expect this game to continue to be awesome, 'cause I really love it. I suspect...
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
That... Huh?
I put you on the spot, sorry.
No problem. No, I mean, I knew this was coming, and I've been trying to think about what I might expect. I can't wait to find out who the great... Is it Matuzi or Mizuti?
Mizuti.
Yeah. I can't wait to figure out who they are. There's even a line early on that I want to know what it's about, where they say, like, look, they refer to themselves in the third person, too.
Yeah.
But in a way that's completely tolerable, and they say, like, okay, I need to tell you something, or the great Mizuti needs to tell you something. Sometimes the great Mizuti might have to lie to you, but you must never lie to the great Mizuti. And I'm like, oh, I want to know what that's about.
Yeah.
So I expect and hope to figure out what that is about. Right now, I think I might be slightly over-leveled. I hope that pace maintains and that I don't get too caught up in any more battles. And story-wise, I'm not really comfortable predicting much more, because there is a couple things that I know.
Yeah.
But just the stuff regarding the Great Mizuti is certainly what I'm most intrigued about at the very moment, as well as like the rest of the plot. You know, I suspect to be completely illuminated about what the rest of the plot is. How about that?
I think that's a good answer. Yeah, because you are a little bit ahead of where, you know, you're into Disc 2 quite a bit, so you know more, and it's difficult because Disc 2, everything changes. Like, so much changes.
Oh, yeah.
So I've probably given away a few things by accident, or like hinted towards them. Just ignore all of that. Pretend that I didn't say anything. And
it's just foreshadowing. That's all.
Exactly.
That's all you're doing.
And the game foreshadows most of it as well. So don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
If you're playing it for the first time, you're missing it. Don't worry. It's quite clever. But yeah, there's some big surprises. So yeah, I'm really excited to come back and talk and just say thank you for both of you for kind of putting up with me hosting, because I know, again, I kind of go through things whistle stop everywhere, but yeah, next week.
I honestly feel, I mean, maybe if someone listens, they want to prove me wrong, but I feel like we covered just about everything I could think of and more. So
Yeah, I mean, like, that's...
I think we got it.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I think that's the thing.
did good.
Like, yeah, I think the thing, like, disc 1 is very linear, like, it's very RPG with a couple of little drip feeds, and then, you know, the rest of the game is kind of just opens up a bit more. But yeah, thank you both so much for joining me. It's been a really good discussion, and I'm really, really, really excited for next week, because things get wild. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. Like, if you don't know what's going to happen.
Turns out this is a very good game, so...
It is. As weird as it is and obtuse as it can be sometimes, and is, like, silly in that, you know, it's really good, and it's a real hidden gem. But yeah, that's next week, so don't worry about that. We're not going to spoil any more. In terms of the rest of the month, well, we're going into February now, aren't we, for Retro Encounter, because this is going up at the end of January, so yes. So February, things are changing up again. We'll be playing Radiant Historia, which is one of the best DS RPGs, so I'm told. Someone will tell me off for saying that, but I've never played it before. It's an Atlas-produced and developed game, and it involves time travel, gorgeous art, and gorgeous music, so more of the same.
A great battle system.
Oh, see,
Radiant Historia is a game you gotta play if you haven't played it.
And I will be playing it, because I have never done that, so I'm really excited to dig into that next month, so that's going to be really good. Also in February, we are going to have a spoiler episode on Yakuza Like a Dragon, so like we did with Hades this month, we're going to be spoiling the hell out of the latest game in the Yakuza series. Solosi will be back for that, so don't worry. Also, if you're a regular listener to another podcast, I'm sure you know who else is going to be on that episode, so please look forward to it. And then also in February, if you're a Final Fantasy XIV fan, there might be some stuff for you to get excited for. We should be getting details for the new expansion on the February the 5th, so that's going to be really cool. But also in February, to celebrate, Retro is going to start a kind of ongoing series, or like a short series, where we cover every single expansion, because Shadowbringers is nearly 2 years old, or will be 2 years old in July, so we're going to go through every single expansion that's been released, with different panelists on every episode. So February will be A Realm Reborn, which is the very first, and no, we're not doing 1.0. Please don't make us talk about 1.0 ever. Like, as cool as that end cutscene is, don't make us, well, I don't think you can play it anymore anyway. But yeah, I'm going to be really excited to listen to that, because I haven't played Final Fantasy XIV for 4 years, and I'm really excited to revisit A Realm Reborn and listen to those hosts talk about it, so that'd be really good. We do know as well what we're playing in March. I'm not going to spoil it. The only thing I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you a little hint, is it is a game from a studio who released something last year in 2020, so it's one of their earlier games. Not too early, so please look forward to that as well. Yeah. Tyler, you've played that game.
I have.
The 2021.
Oh.
You have, yes. So yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Are you looking at Trello? Or, yeah, we're looking at our giant ideas board. But yes, so we've got a lot of good stuff coming up on Retro Encounter, which is great, because we had such a good year last year, so I'm really excited to see where the show goes. But yeah, in the meantime, if you want to reach out to us, you can email us at retro@rpgfan.com, send us game suggestions, questions, I don't know, make predictions about March's game if you're listening to this on January, whenever this comes out. It'll be really great to hear from you. We love responding to your emails. Or if you want to interact with us in other ways, you can comment on the message boards, which we do still have, are pretty quiet though. You can also comment on the site. We have news posts that you can leave comments on under. Or we've got a Facebook page, an Instagram, a Twitter, a Discord, which you can join up. We've got a YouTube channel where we produce and publish reviews. We do like the beginning hours of games. We do long plays eventually. Greg's doing a great job on there as well. So it's a really good thing that we've got rolling over the last couple of years that we hope to keep evolving. So yeah, please subscribe and join all of those. And also, we also have a Twitch channel which streams every single day, old and new RPGs. Scott does a fabulous job on there, and Max also helps out once a week as well, so that's really great. We've got a really good variety of things going on at all times, including Scott's done speedruns. Like at the moment, he's working on a speedrun for Chrono Cross, so that'd be really interesting to see how he progresses with that. So yeah, we've got tons of stuff to check out all the time. We've also got 3 other fine podcasts. We've got Random Encounter, which is hosted by Greg and Jono, who I may have suggested about earlier, the Yakuza person. Yeah. They talk about random stuff, whatever they're playing, some current topics and things. There's Rhythm Encounter, which made a return in 2020. Talks about RPG and adventure game and visual novel music. Fantastic to see that back, and I've had a lot of fun on it this year. Again, another link. We've recently had an episode on Yoko Shimomura, so we haven't recorded it as of this recording, but it will be up by the time we are published as an episode. So yeah, that'll be a really great one to hear. And we've also got our partners over at Phoenix Edge who cover current events and news. But please subscribe to all of those, listen to them, because they all do such a fabulous job, including us. If you like me as a host as well, please rate us and review us on wherever you listen to us, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. We love feedback. Please give us feedback.
As long as it's 5 stars.
But yeah, if you want to reach out to us personally, you don't have to do it just through the site. We've got other ways of you can contact us. So Pete, where's the best place to find you?
So you can contact me or reach out to me with Twitter. I am Pete Barbero 1. That's a numeral 1. And I am on, for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, I will play mostly old computer games on Twitch at RG Halfpenny. Right now I'm playing through an old... it's kind of sort of relevant, although not really. It's a tactical World War II first-person shooter that came out in the mid-2000s called Brothers in Arms, Earned in Blood, and they have a Tour of Duty mode, which is basically just a roguelike. It's like, do 5 straight missions without dying. So, hey, is that an RPG? No, it's not an RPG. Anyway, yeah, basically, those are the 2 best ways to see what I'm up to.
Why did I not know you had a Twitch channel? I'm going to follow you. That's really bad of me. I've heard of Brothers in Arms. I've heard of that. Yeah. But no, it's not an RPG. But it doesn't matter. If you want some variety, go and follow Pete on Twitch. Tyler, where can we find you?
Probably best to find me on Twitter at Cosmos Chaos, and that's Cosmos with a K. And shameless plug, I do co-host a Xeno-themed podcast called Xeno Chat. And you can...
What?
Did you not know?
No!
What? Oh. Yeah, so you can follow that on Twitter at Xenochat Podcast. And one day I would like to do an episode one day where we actually talk about other Monolith Soft games, so this is kind of getting some experience for that.
Yeah. Oh, that would be really good. No, it's not a shameless plug. It's always a good plug. Please plug. If you do other things other than RPG Fan, I want to hear about them. Xenochat is great. I will watch Pete's streams going forward. Or even, do you archive the VODs, at least?
Sure. I think I have it set to do that.
Yes. Okay.
I'm like a grandpa on Twitch, so
don't
whatever technology. Yeah, I'm working on learning that stuff still. But yeah, I think I have it to automatically archive.
Cool. That's fine. I will have a dig around. But yeah, if you want to reach out to me personally, the best place again is probably Twitter. I am at Alana Hagues on there. You can find me on, if you're a member of the RPG Fan Discord. If you're not, come and join us. I am Alana on there, or you can email me direct at alanah@rpgfan.com. I don't do Twitch, and I don't run my own podcast. I am wholly unremarkable as a human being with technology.
Nope. Stop. Bye, everyone. Alana's amazing. Bye. Thanks for listening.
Okay. If I am putting myself down, then it's definitely time to end the episode. Thank you. Good night. And good luck.